How democratic are US elections? The USA likes to see itself as the model of democracy, but is its voting system as free and fair as it thinks?
Can everyone vote? No. Out of America's 50 states, 48 have laws that disenfranchise people with a criminal conviction. In 2022, for example, 4.4 million people lost the right to vote, many for minor drug offenses. This phenomenon has a racial angle, because while 1 in 50 Americans is disenfranchised, that figure rises to 1 in 19 among black adults. Drug use isn't more common among blacks, but they are 6 times more likely to be arrested and jailed for drug offenses due to institutionalized racism. The process began in the 1970s. At this time, after the Civil Rights era and anti-war protests of the 60s, the U.S. elected the right-wing President Nixon. He launched a war on drugs, which greatly increased penalties and incarceration for even minor drug offenses. This was sold to the U.S. public as a vital law and order policy, but its real aim was to target blacks and left-wingers. The police obliged by focusing on black neighborhoods, creating the imbalance in the penal system that we see today. The injustice finally began to end under Obama, but the mass disenfranchisement it caused still affects U.S. politics today.
Is it easy to vote? Less and less so. In 2013, America's Supreme Court weakened the Voting Rights Act of 1965, making it easier for states to practice voter suppression so long as they weren't proved to be guilty of discrimination. Immediately, several states brought in new laws, typically involving bureaucratic obstacles, that made it harder for blacks to get on the electoral register. Or they make it harder for people to vote on the day. Since the 2013 ruling, for example, America has lost 100,000 voting stations, making voting more of a challenge for people without cars. From 2016 to 2018, 17 million Americans had their names removed from the electoral lists on the grounds, often incorrect, that they were inadmissible. Since presidential elections usually depend on the result in a small number of swing states, and that the margin of victory can be as little as a few hundred votes, this has the power to change who becomes president. As Barack Obama said in 2018, "We're the only advanced democracy that deliberately discourages people from voting."
Are elections fair? No. The problem is that voting districts in each state are designed by politicians in those states. Using AI-assisted computer profiling, the politicians in power design the electoral map to give their party a majority in as many districts as possible, and group the opposing party voters into as few districts as possible. This anti-democratic practice, known as gerrymandering, got its name in 1820 when a state governor named Elbridge Gerry designed a voting district shaped like a salamander. Since then, the shapes have got far more bizarre and elections less fair. So, of the 435 congressional districts that elect people to the House of Representatives, only 69 are considered to be truly competitive, and, of those, only 22 are genuinely difficult to predict. The rest are foregone conclusions.
Was the 2020 election stolen? In 2020, President Trump refused to admit that he had lost the election to Joe Biden, who got 7 million more votes than him and a clear majority in the Electoral College. For months before this, Trump had been preparing the US public for the idea that the Democrats were going to steal the election with fake votes and other illegal means. When he lost, he promptly started saying he'd been cheated of victory, yet, despite filing 62 lawsuits challenging the results, he's never produced any evidence. However, 1 in 3 US voters and 2/3 of Republican voters believe in the big lie that Joe Biden was not the legitimate winner of the 2020 election.